Hiya guys, I'm Brad. I've done a few different video tutorials on anodizing aluminium which you might have seen, and today I'd like to talk to you about titanium. It's a fun metal to work with, titanium. It doesn't involve any dyes like aluminium. There's no sealing process involved. The colour's actually created by putting electricity through the piece, and depending on what voltage you put through will give you a different colour. So you don't have to worry about going out and buying a full range of different dyes for titanium. I can tell you now off the top of my head, 15 volts will give you a rustic sort of bronze colour, whereas when you get to 25 volts it will give you a nice blue colour, and it gets a bit lighter as you go up to 32, somewhere around there, and then it will go into the yellows, and then it will start going a bit paler, and then you get into your greens. And it's the light spectrum similar to what you would see when you look at a pool of oil on the floor, for example. You know the pool of oil doesn't actually have any colour, but as you look at it you can see the shimmer of a bit like a rainbow effect going over it, and it's those colours you can reproduce when you're anodising. To confuse you a little bit more, there is actually no colour when you anodise titanium. So when it's blue, it's not actually blue. Basically what happens is it's going into physics, and it's reflection and refraction, if you remember all of that from school. And what you're doing when you anodise titanium or aluminium, you're growing a layer of crystals on the outside. Now, if you think how a mirror works, for example, it's actually a sheet of glass with a reflective metal sticker on the back of the glass, and the light passes through the glass, bounces off the reflective back, then back to you, and you see your mirror image. Similar sort of applies to when you anodise something. The light passes through the layers of crystals, and then it bounces off the shiny metal. But as it's going through these crystals, which are imperfect, the light refracts, changing the angle in which it comes back out. It's this refraction of light what actually causes the colour to be seen. It's an optical illusion, it's an effect. And depending on how thick this layer of crystals is, will depend on how much refraction of light there is. And it's that what varies the colour. The more the light refracts, the further along the spectrum of light it will go. So this is why we can vary the colour by putting more voltage through, because obviously if we put more voltage through, say all the way up to 110 volts, it's going to build a very thick layer opposed to what it would do if we only gave it 15. Okay, so that's the science behind it, but the practicality and how to do this is pretty straightforward. With regards to what you need, well, you need an electrolyte, which is a conductive liquid. You need your cathodes, and you need your anode, but in this case the actual piece of titanium will be your anode, that's your positive, and then your cathode is whatever else you're going to put in your tank. A lot of people which are anodising titanium will put a sheet piece of titanium in the tank, and we'll get to the tank in a minute. I'll show you a close-up of the tank and what's actually involved, but like I say, you can use a sheet of titanium if you really want to. I've actually got pieces of lead in my tank. I find them great for what I need. Now, they're not exactly clean. They can smut your tank up after a while, but let's put it this way, I've been using mine for over a year and it's never caused me a problem. So, you know, it's up to you. The industry standard, or what's recommended when anodising aluminium, is to use grade 6061 T6 strength aluminium bar. That's what I use commercially in aluminium anodising tanks, and I'll tell you now, anodising titanium is exactly the same apparatus. It's exactly the same tank with sulfuric acid in it, with your cathodes running along the side. So if you want detailed instructions on how to actually set one of those tanks up, have a look at my anodising at home videos, and the first one of that series of 3 will actually show you how to build a tank. So that's something you might want to look into. What it doesn't go into, however, is the power supply. Power supply is something I'll talk to you in a minute about, but that's the important bit. But what can I tell you about the electrolytes? Well, the electrolyte, as I said, is a conductive liquid. I use sulfuric acid. I have reagent strength, which is 95% pure sulfuric acid. Pretty hard to come by, to be honest. You can buy a car battery top-up liquid, which is at 30%, so you only have to dilute that at a 50-50 ratio, because you want it around 15% sulfuric to water. I personally add 200 ml of 95% sulfuric acid to 2 litres of distilled water. That's, to me, is a good mix. With anodizing titanium, you can use quite a broad spectrum of different things for your electrolyte. A lot of people use borax, which is a chlorine-free bleach, which you can find in the laundry aisle of supermarkets. I've even heard people use Coca-Cola. As long as it conducts, it's a good thing. But whatever you do, here's your safety tip, make sure it hasn't got any chlorine in it. No chlorides whatsoever. So don't use bleach, because that's got chlorine in it. Don't use hydrochloric acid. The chloric is a clue, that's your chloride. Anything which has got chlorine in it will produce chlorine gas. I'm sure we all agree the last thing we want in our workshops is chlorine gas when we're trying to have a little bit of fun. So they used that in World War II for a reason, chlorine gas. It's not something you want to be generating in a tank. So yeah, keep away from your chlorides. Like I say, in an ideal world, if you want to copy me, tried and tested, works fine, get yourself sulfuric acid. It's a safe bet. So what we're going to cover today, now I'm going to show you how to anodize this a complete colour, and we'll go through the colour spectrum up to about 70 volts, as that's what my power supply handles. You can go up to about 110 volts, but they'll give you greens and things, but unfortunately my power supply won't go up to that, so I'm kind of limited in what I can show you in that respect. So once we've shown you the solid colours, what we'll then move on to is mask anodizing, and we will add some text to it, and we'll anodize the text in a different colour. And going across there, I'm going to show you how to use a anode pen. And an anode pen, there you go, is a pen, but instead of using ink, it uses electricity, and you can actually write with it, or colour or draw. So if you're a true artist, which I'm really not, you can draw pictures with these. I'll show you some pictures on this later on, which an artist called Jean has done from France, and they're fantastic. It's a perfect illustration of what can be done with these tools. Okay, so here's your anodizing tank. Pretty straightforward, really. What I have is one tub, large tub, with a smaller tub inside it. Now, the smaller tub inside contains sulfuric acid at a ratio of 200 mils per 2 litres of distilled waters, and that's based on 95% reagent strength. So it's pretty well up there, this sulfuric acid, but like I say, you can use battery top-up acid and dilute it on a 50-50% ratio. Typically, that will bring you down to about 15% content. So that's an ideal mix. Like I say, I have 2 pieces of lead flashing, just bent over the sides, which I use as my cathodes. These are my negative plates in my tank. Both of these are wired together with a piece of 6 amp mains cable. The 6 amp is mainly for anodizing aluminium. I'm not really going to get up to anywhere near those sort of currents when I'm touching titanium. It really does draw milliamps, this stuff. I can tell you now that this whole piece here will use round about 120 milliamps in total, so it's negligible. So what we're going to do is connect the positive wire to this, and we're going to place it in the tank, and we're going to crank the voltages up. And as we go up through the different voltages, I'm going to show you the different colours, what it actually produces. But as to the tank, that's it. The only other thing left then is the power supply, and I say that's the only thing, it is actually the main thing. So let's spend a little bit of time just going over the power supply as well. Okay, so here's my lab grade power supply. It's made by Electro Automatique, which is a German manufacturer, and I can't praise them highly enough, to be honest. This is the EA PSI 607203. That will give you a voltage range of 72 volts maximum and 3 amps maximum. That's fantastic for anodizing aluminium. It's not so great for titanium. In an ideal world, you would want your power supply to go up to at least 110. So if you can find one that does 120, 130 volts, you're laughing, really. Ampere for titanium isn't all that important if you're dealing with small pieces. You'll tend to find that if it'll do 2 or 3 amps, that's plenty for you. You won't need more than that. But one of the main things which you want with this is constant voltage. Now, in the anodizing of aluminium videos, I was talking a lot about constant currents. It's the opposite with titanium. You want a constant voltage, which basically means if we tell this power supply to be 20 volts, it will give you 20 volts, and it will give you that 20 volts by turning up the current or turning down the current, automatically varying it, so it'll actually give you the right voltage output. And obviously, as we're dealing with values which actually specify what the colours are, it's very important that that number is accurate, and this is why we use power supplies like this. You can't really get away with just taking a box standard power supply for an old kid's toy and something and chucking it in a tank with a multimeter on it and expect to get accurate colours. It will work, it will give you colours, but it's more guesswork that. Another way around that is to take 9 volt square batteries, the PP3 batteries, and wire them together in series, because obviously the voltage multiplies. So you take 2 9 volt batteries, that'll give you 18 volts, and you can add one to that to give you 27, and so on and so forth, and you can keep adding alkaline batteries together in such a manner to generate the voltages what you need. It's a bit of a mishmash way. I would really recommend and strongly recommend that someone invests in this, mainly because it's not just that. You're dealing with liquids and electricity, and you're going up to 110 volts in some cases. So these things have got built-in trips and breakers. So if there is a short, or God forbid something else goes wrong, this will cut the supply off for you. So it's a safety tool as well. The last thing, you will see some circuits on the internet about taking a light dimmer switch for, you know, just your lights in your house, and you plug that into the mains and then chuck the lead in your tank. You're asking to get electrocuted, to be honest. Yes, okay, the dimmer switch will vary the voltage for you, and theoretically, yes, it will work. Just don't put your finger in the tank or don't touch the wires. And for God's sake, if you are going to do something like that, then you certainly want to make sure you've got one of those RCD circuit breakers on it, just in case there is a short. So, but if you're going to do it properly, invest in your money and buy something like this. Now, I'll quite happily send the links to these power supplies to anyone and help you pick out the right one for your application. So if you're not sure on what one you should be buying, feel free to drop us a message and I'll give you a hand with that. That's not an issue. So yeah, that's your power supply. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I've secured it with a piece of electrical tape. Obviously, you can make a jig up of a piece of titanium and lower it into your tank. Anything which, the same rules apply to anodizing aluminium. If it's a ferrous metal, steel or something else, it will corrode and rust. So it will dissolve into dust in the bottom of your tank, and that same applies to all of your coppers, your brasses, your bronzes. Anything apart from titanium or aluminium shouldn't go in the tank, and we'll come to that in due course. So as it stands at the moment, all we have in here is a piece of titanium with a positive wire attached to it, sitting nicely in the tank with no electricity flowing through it whatsoever. So what we're going to do now is start the process off, and we're going to put through, what do you think, 15 volts, and we'll see what colour that gives us. One of the common questions I get asked is how long this process actually takes to do a successful anodizing on a piece of titanium. Well, let me show you. So that's 15 volts selected on the power supply. I have it in constant voltage mode, so I know it will give me 15 volts, and I'm going to turn the power supply on. Okay, a couple of seconds to sink in. That's done. So there you go. You can see it's given us this lovely bronze sort of golden colour there. Absolutely beautiful. That's finished. You know, you can rinse that off now and you're done. But what we're going to do is pop it back in the tank, and we're going to increase it to, what do you think, 20 volts? Like a nice step of 5 volts, doesn't it? Okay, there we are, and we give it a couple of seconds just to soak the colour into it. You're done. What colour is it going now? See a hint of purple appearing in that? Quite a nice colour. Okay, so we'll pop that back in. And we will go to 25. Okay, a couple of seconds to let it soak in. We'll take that out. And we have a lovely shade of purple going on there, look. Okay. Back in it goes. Now we're getting up in the voltages now, aren't we? So I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to put a pair of gloves on. Moving along now to 30 volts. can see it's starting to go a nice blue. Okay, that's up to 40 volts. As you can see, we got a nice, not sure if you can see that there, but a nice sky blue sort of colour going on there. It's beautiful. And we'll pop that back into the tank and we'll knock it up another 5 volts. Going up to 45. And again, a couple of seconds just to soak in. There we are. That's at 45, and we're now starting to approach towards the yellows, so you're going to start to see this colour fading out now. As you can see, it's getting quite pale. 55. Yay! There you go, you see that tint coming through? And there we are at 60. See that nice yellow goldeny tint it's got to it now. Now I don't know if you can make out these dots at the end there. Just here. Now that's where the part touched the cathode, and it's basically arc welding. So if you don't want to pit and mar your work, don't touch the plates, otherwise you're going to have to polish that out again. Okay, so you can just actually a slight hint of green in there, but nevertheless, let's go up to 70 or 72, as that's the max my power supply goes to. So there we are. Whatever this is the maximum scope from my power supply. So this is the highest I can get in the spectrum with this power supply without buying a better one. Okay. There we have it. There you go. It's hot as hell. So, a bit of a yellow going on there. A few different colours going on in there. Greens, yellows, and you see a hint of orange. But, yeah. There you go. Okay, so for straight anodizing, that pretty much covers it. It's literally just a case of putting it in the tank for a couple of seconds, picking out the voltage you want depending on the colour, leaving it in the tank, taking it out, job done. Simple as that. Give it a good rinse down in distilled water afterwards, of course, because it is covered in sulfuric acid. You don't want to really be dropping that around your workshop. So just drop it into a tank of distilled water and give it a good rinse off. So what we're going to do mask anodizing. And what you need to understand with mask anodizing is once you've gone past the colour, you can't go back down to it. Basically, if you started off with that bronze colour, which is around 15 volts, and you went up to blue, which is 30-ish volts, you can't then go back down to bronze. If you think about it, the layer of crystals have got thicker because you've gone up to 30 volts, and all you can do is either stay at that level of thickness or make it thicker by increasing the voltage and going up the colour spectrum, but you can't go back down. The only way you can go back down is by sanding the piece or using an abrasive to rub it off. So, you know, you got to plan out what you're planning on doing with your colours. Now we're going to do mask anodizing, so we're going to be using 2 colours on this, and for argument's sake all I'm going to do is put the letter B on a piece of titanium. So what I'm going to do is mask out the piece of titanium, and I'm going to anodize it up to my base coat, which is my highest one, which is blue. Okay, that means everything will be blue apart from what's underneath the sticker. I'm then going to take the sticker off. I'm going to re-anodize it a lower colour, and when I say lower colour I'm referring to the voltage value, so I'm going to go straight in to say 15 volts, which is that nice bronze, and I end up with a nice bronze B on a nice blue piece. That's the theory, so we'll give it a try, shall we? Okay, so here's the piece, and as you can see I've put the letters BAD down it. Now BAD stands for my ability of putting stickers on straight. So there you go, that's 3 letters, so let's go for that, shall we? Okay, so first things first, let's get the base colour blue. That is rather nice, but it's not quite light enough for what I'm going for. So I'm going to go up to 32 volts. Yeah, it's going. See, a little bit lighter. What's that? 34. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay. So, what we're going to do now, I'm just going to give this a wash first of all, before I put my hands all over it. Okay. So I'm going to take the stickers off. Then we're going to do it again at a lower voltage. Okay. So once you got the stickers off, we're just going to anodise that now. A nice dark colour to bring that lettering out. So we'll go back down to, let's try 12, shall we, or 10. Okay, yeah, it's got a golden colour. Not quite what we're after. It's 12. A bit darker. Okay, so going in the tank at 15 volts. Now as you can see, well, you might be able to make it out there, you've got BAD in dark letters and a blue background. I could have took the blue a little bit lighter to give it better contrast to stand out, but the principle's the same, you get the idea. So yeah, that's just two colours. Of course you can keep layering this and layering this, block out bits and just leave it bare metal if you like, if you don't want to anodise certain parts. But it's mainly just to show you the principle of applying stickers to it and how to anodise two different colours, for example. Okay, so that brings us on to the last part I'm going to be covering on this video, and it's the anode pen. Now, the anode pen works like a normal pen, but rather than having ink in it, it has electricity in it. And as you've seen on the other parts, I'm sure you can guess how it works. Depending on the voltage, what we vary going through the piece will depend on what colour ink comes out of this pen. So, let's just give this a go, shall we? And I'll give you an idea what it does. Now, I'll tell you in advance, I'm no artist. Alright, but I've seen the work what people do with these, and it's fantastic. I'll give you a brief demonstration on how this tool actually works, and then I'll put up some pictures demonstrating what this work actually does. Oh, what this work actually looks like. It really is something else. Especially applied with masking techniques where you would use nail varnish to mask out parts where you don't want this pendant to affect, and then you can go back to that, remove it with acetone, colour that part of a different shade, and you can make full pictures up out of it. Brilliant. But without further ado, let's just crack on and have a go with this, shall we? Okay, so what I have here, I have the anode pen, which consists of a plastic body which acts as an insulator to stop me getting electric shock, and it has a wooden tip going into a titanium nib. And basically we can soak up some electrolyte actually in the wooden tip. Now of course they can be all different shapes and sizes if you're looking to do calligraphy writing or anything like that. But for this demonstration, this is just a sharp point, and we'll show you how this works. As you can see, it's got a lovely purple look. Okay, so we can increase the voltage some more. This time we're getting a blue. Sometimes you have to go over it a few times just to bring the colour out a little bit more, expose it to the electricity. There you go. Another dip in the electrolyte, keep it wet. Look at that. Lovely pale blue. Yeah. And again, we'll crank the voltage up. Of course, gone blue a lot easier this time. Lift the colour over it again. It's gone a bit lighter. So you'll learn to vary what voltages will give you what colours. Let's go over it a little bit more. There you go. Starting to go yellow now. So you get the idea on how this tool works. It's just for fine details. And of course, if we was to turn this over, let's go back down to the darker colour a second. Now I'd hazard a guess. Let's take a blank bit here. There you go. So with a bit of practice, obviously it'd help if it was flat. You can actually sign your name on your pieces as well. So yeah, lots of uses to this tool. A lot more easier than masking somehow, especially if you want that freehand touch. But like I say, I'll stick some pictures up and you can take a look at what real artists can do with this thing. But yeah. Okay, so there you go. That's a brief introduction into titanium. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and yeah, just by all means, just grab yourself a few legs of titanium and have a play with it. At the end of the day, if you think you've done it wrong, just rub it off and do it again. It's a lot easier than having to use caustic soda stripping off aluminium and things, as I'm sure some of you will have done. Reanodizing aluminium can be a bit of a pain, but titanium is a pleasure to work with, and I'm sure you'll enjoy doing it.